各位朋友，大家晚上好，我是王佳，欢迎大家来到我和乔叶教授主持的第3期论坛。For those who don't speak Chinese, good evening and welcome to our lecture series number 3, which is part of the project Preventative Health Services for Individuals with Autism in Asian American Communities. Okay, I'm going to chat. I think I need to mute someone here. All right, we are kindly asking all our audience to mute yourselves during this workshop unless you have questions. All right, I think I muted everyone here. So all the lectures are part of the project Preventative Health Services for Individuals with Autism in Asian American Communities. To begin, Dr. Ye Qiao, the academic principal investigator of this project, will take a moment to share some background information with us. Okay, Dr. Qiao.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jia, and hello, everyone. Before we start this lecture, I'd just like to take a moment to share a little bit about our project. As Jia mentioned, it's a preventive healthcare service for individuals with autism in Asian American communities. So I'm Ye, the academic PI, and Jia is our community PI. So we are both parents of children with special needs. So this project is very close to our hearts. And so this project is aimed to build the partnership between Hopkins and the Asian American community to better understand and address disparities in preventive healthcare for individuals in autism. So we have two main parts. One is community engagement, and the second is survey. So we will share the survey next spring, and we hope you all take part and share your experience with us. Tonight is our third lecture, and so delighted to welcome Dr. Zosia Zaks as our speaker. I first met Dr. Zaks last year at the KKI annual conference, where he moderated a panel discussion with several adults, autistic adults. So I'm so impressed because I can tell everyone has different strengths, and Dr. Zak was able to encourage them to engage the conversation and share their stories. So when we're planning this lecture series, so he was the first person who came to my mind. So I'm really grateful that he's here today and share his insights and experience with our community. And before I hand this over to them, I want to also give a special shout out to Jia, because you can tell all these slides has been translated to Chinese. She really made a lot of effort. So I will next invite Jia to introduce Zosia and moderate tonight's lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Qiao. I have to say I relied on AI technology for some of the translations, but I did go through everything. But still, if you see any inaccurate translation, please excuse us. So as Dr. Qiao mentioned, we are truly honored to have Dr. Zaks with us tonight to share his expertise and many years of experience working with youth and adults on the autism spectrum. Since Dr. Zaks will be introducing himself shortly, I will provide his introduction in Chinese only. Dr. Zaks 在费尔丁研究大学获得人类发展学的博士学位，他的研究聚焦于神经多样性的范式转变与包容性的人类发展理论。他是一名认证的康复顾问，拥有20多年为神经多样性的青少年和年轻的成人提供咨询和辅导的经验。他的工作致力于帮助个体在社区中生活、成长，并实现他们的理想。2013年至2022年间 ，Dr. Zaks 他担任陶森大学哈斯曼自闭症成人中心的项目与教育经理。他在中心开设并讲授多元教育的课程， 让大学生通过服务、学习与自闭症成人共同探索与成长。同时，他还建立了自闭症大学生同伴支持与就业准备项目。在离开 Towson 大学之后，他成为了 Rowan 大学首位神经多样性的驻校学者。目前，他继续以社会公正的视角讲授自闭症相关课程，培养学生成为推动社会变革的力量。在接下来我们的讲座当中，如果有
过来的话，我就和他那个了，我就和他那个，哎妈，哎呦，他已经把牌都翻了。
哎，你好，请 mute 一下好吗？我来这边 mute 掉。有的时候我们就是打进这个 call 的时候，可能就是它默认就是打开的声音。在我们讲座的过程当中，如果有需要，大家可以在 Zoom 下方的工具栏看到有 CC 字样的那个图标，我们可以点击打开字幕，这样可以帮助我们更好的跟上讲座的内容。然后在过程当中，Dr. Zaks 可能会有一些问题问大家，然后我们也可以通过自己 unmute 来参加，或者是在 chat box 里面 type 进去。然后同时如果有问题的话，也可以再输入文字提问。我们会在合适的时间集中解答。刚才有人问会不会有 recording， 会的，我们刚刚已经点击了这个录音录像，然后我们在后面会在我们的这个视频频道叫Neuro Wellness Talk， 我们会在上面给放出链接，到时候我们在讲座的结束，我会把这个链接频道会放在我们的 chat box 里面。All right, during the workshop, if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box. I will be monitoring the chat box during the workshop. Dr. Zaks will answer most questions during the Q&R part. All right, Dr. Zaks, I'm going to hand the mic over to you now.
Well, first, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm going to go ahead and start my slideshow here. Okay, so again, thank you very much. I'm very excited to speak with you tonight. I'm going to speak for about 50 minutes and leave plenty of time for questions and answers. And we're going to be talking tonight about getting ready for adulthood. So this is great if you have a teenager, a young adult in your household, in your family, but it's also really good for parents of younger children because it will give you an idea of what's coming up. You know, we don't talk a lot about what happens in the adult system and the adult world, and it can often take parents by surprise. So hopefully this information will help you feel more confident and ready. It's my cultural practice to always just start really quickly with a few acknowledgments to acknowledge the nations on whose land we're on, and I'm in Baltimore, so that's the Piscataway, Patuxent, Nanticoke, and Susquehannock people. I also do a labor acknowledgement to acknowledge the labor of enslaved people from Africa who built so much of this country's wealth and infrastructure. And I also always take a second to call in and invite ancestors, descendants. You know, a lot of times we think we're just talking amongst ourselves, but in fact, there's the spirit and the energy of all kinds of people here, and we want to invite them into our conversation and have their lives inform our learning. Okay, so just a little bit about me to get started. I know there was an introduction in Chinese, so I'm not gonna belabor this too much, but I'll just let people know I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor. Nobody's ever heard of us. We are specially trained counselors who are trained to work with disabled people, primarily disabled adults. My PhD is in human development, and I continue to research paradigm change. So we're seeing a big change in American society regarding how we view neurodivergent children and what we think we need to do at school or in therapy or in programs. I do a lot of consulting and I do a lot of talking, like the talk that I'm doing here tonight. Just a little bit more about me also as a self-advocate. So I'm autistic. I grew up in the 1970s. I had a lot of issues of various kinds, but back then our ideas about autism were very different. And when teachers approached my parents and said, "Hey, we think Zosia is autistic," my parents were like, "That's impossible. Zosia talks." that's kind of what we thought back then, that it was very rare, and you had to have a certain kind of profile. So anyway, I wasn't diagnosed until much later. But anyway, I mentioned this because, I don't just do this professionally. I've lived as an autistic person. I got through autistic teenagehood. I also have two young adult children who are autistic. So I understand things from a parental perspective also. One more quick point before we just really dive in. I want to recognize, honor, and acknowledge cultural differences. So tonight, what you're going to be hearing primarily is the American system. What mostly happens in most American communities. But I want to acknowledge that it's not the only way. And so there may be cultural differences that I misunderstand, and so I ask your forgiveness in advance. And then I also want to underscore that you and your family may have different ways of doing things, and that's okay too. But at least this will give you the information for what's usually going on in American schools and American communities. Okay, so this is kind of an overview of today. We're gonna look a little bit at autism and autistic adulthood, and then we're really gonna get into the details of the adult system, preparing for life after school, some what I call must-haves for adulthood. So like I said, I've worked with many of these teenagers, hundreds over the last couple decades. So a few things really stand out for me. Now, there's a lot of information, a lot of slides. We're not going to get to every single little point. There's slides where I'll say, okay, here's some videos or some information that you could look at on your own later. I may go through certain parts quickly, but you'll have access to this PowerPoint, and we'll also be able to go back over things during the question period if I treat something quickly and you really wanted me to explain it more. Okay, so I'm just diving right in here. So some of you have heard of the term neurodiversity, or you may have even heard of people talking about neurodiversity affirming perspective or practice. And what we're talking about there is that there's really a lot of new ideas coming out about autism. So the old idea was, this child's totally abnormal. We have to get them to stop being different. And they have all of these challenges, and we would like to get rid of the autism, right? Now we're really seeing people say, well, wait a minute, diversity is natural for human beings, including brain diversity. And what autism really is it's those brain differences in how the person learns, how they deal with the sensory world, how they regulate their emotions and their physical states. And so when we see challenges, it's because we're missing out on creating a good fit between the person and the world around them. But if we come in with like a lot of supports and tolerance and patience, the differences don't have to be a problem. All right. So just to give you a little taste that ideas are changing, and we also can look at these challenges through a developmental lens. So a lot of times people will say, oh, you see, he can't do this or he can't do that. Well, maybe, but maybe not yet. All right. So we know about a lot of developmental delays when kids are little tiny toddlers, right? But we forget that you're changing and developing your whole life. So at 18 years of age, we say to an autistic young adult, how come you can't do what your brothers do? Or how come you can't do what the other 18-year-olds are doing? And we blame them when actually it's just that they're growing in a different way and at a different pace. And we need to respect that there's different ways of growing up and learning and creating a life for yourself. It's not an inferior path. I'm not implying that at all. I just want people to keep that in mind as the first point that I want to make here. Okay, so I talked a little bit about this neurodiversity affirming idea, and this is a little chart that I actually use when I train professionals. Okay, so when I'm trying to teach them how to use a neurodiversity affirming approach, I give them some things to avoid and some things to focus on. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to give a brief overview that the neurodiversity affirming approach is really about respecting these differences. And I don't mean to do a disservice here. I know there can be some pretty intense challenges, and someone may need to learn skills. They may need a lot of support. So I'm not saying it's easy, okay? But we have found in the research that when we constantly focus on, oh, it's abnormal, oh, we gotta get you to stop, autistic people tend to internalize that, and it can really impact their self-esteem and their mental health. So we understand that there can be really tough times, tough challenges, need a lot of support, a lot of time to learn new ways of learning. But we want the message to be that you're okay. You know, all of us are different, and we can help you. We can help you figure out what you can do, what you like to do, and let's build on that. My friend and colleague, Dr. Gerhardt, always says, you know, this is in terms of work when he's talking to people about employment. We always tell wheelchair users, I mean, we don't tell wheelchair users, sorry. We don't say, oh, we'll get you a job when you can stand up. But we keep telling autistic people, well, we can get you a job when you can act normal, or you can be in the classroom when you can be like all the normal kids. And that it really can be very harmful approach. So I just wanted to give you a little taste of the neurodiversity paradigm change that we're seeing. All right, so the adult service system, what I mean by that is where your child's going if they need supports and services after school. All right, so school, we're thinking kindergarten to 12th grade. Some students are still at school until the year they turn 21. Okay, so when I say transition age, I know there's other transitions in life, but transition age here is referring to that adolescent period, and there's a lot of changes, as you know. I want to emphasize, because sometimes we say, oh yeah, it's all about the teenager changing, but actually parents are changing too. Your role is changing. All the family relationships are shifting, and the sibling roles are changing too. And your person may need support beyond 18 years of age, 19 years of age. But that support and what it looks like and how you deliver it is all going to shift. So that's important to think about, that you're changing too. I put some questions here that I would really encourage you to consider because we're just going to go through a lot of information tonight and we're on Zoom. I'm not going to open it up for discussion, but it's really important to think about how you feel about the fact that your baby is growing up. And they may be different than your other children. They may be different than other children in their class. And how can we help them feel good about themselves and reach their dreams, the dreams that your family has, the dreams that they have for themselves. And we really want to work on bringing out those strengths. I mention this because I understand that when children are young, there's a period of time where we're trying really hard to bring their skills up, or if they don't have a lot of language, we're trying to help them strengthen their communication. And we want to keep learning and supporting the development of skills throughout life. I'm not saying we stop at some magical point, but the adult world shifts. And at some point, we have to sit down and say, okay, this is the person we got. How can we help them have the best life possible? And that might, like I said, include ongoing skills development and learning. But at some point, it also has to be about accepting this person and helping them be who they are. The other key thing that parents really need to understand, it's a huge difference. When your child's in the school system, they have to get services by law. There may be some problems with the school system, but that's the law. All right, and it's based on their needs. Okay, we also don't expect children to self-advocate. No one expects a 6-year-old to raise their hand and say, gee, I'm having a hard time sitting at my desk, or the letters and numbers are flipping around. Could you please test me and get me some services? Okay, but they're children. So the adults have to watch and see what's going on and figure out what each child needs. And if they need an IEP, there's a process for that. The adult system is totally different. It is completely eligibility based. So once you leave school, you have no rights to supports or programs, right? The eligibility requirements vary widely depending on what state you're in, and it's totally a self-advocacy system. So if you're at work and you're struggling and you need more time for projects, or you need a different kind of seat, your boss is not watching out for you and saying, geez, Zosha, I think, you could do this job, but you need some accommodations to do it. So let me go get you the accommodations. You have to ask, right? The other thing is there can be wait lists. I think in Maryland, the average wait time for a spot in a supported living apartment is about 12 years. The demand for services always is outstripping the resources. Now, some people will challenge me and say, well, the Americans with Disabilities Act gives you something. It does. It gives you protection against discrimination. And it also says that at work, they have to provide reasonable accommodations, but it's not promised. Okay, the boss could say, well, the accommodations you need are not reasonable. Or even if I give you these accommodations, you can't do the job, so I'm not doing it. All right, so it's very different than the K through 12 system. And that's sometimes a real surprise for parents. So at school, when the child is still at school during high school, the law says that schools have to help the child get ready for adulthood by putting goals into the child's individual education plan. Now, they have to be matched to academic goals. So let's say your child is really good at baking and they want to be a baker. And so you're getting them ready for that possibility. Well, they're going to need to measure ingredients. So you can put that into their math lessons. Okay. The rules for the transition goals, I always let families know so that way you understand where the school is thinking and what their mandates are. So let's say they have a goal, like I just mentioned, you're going to learn fractions to help you with this career dream of being a baker. Well, they have to be results oriented. So, you'll learn fractions and then you'll take the test and we'll see that you learned them. It has to be tailored to the individual. So if you don't want to be a baker, I can't force you, even if I think it's a good idea. All right. And like I said, it has to be all about adult life. Okay, so if it's just because you like doing something, okay, that's nice. What the school is trying to do is prepare you for employment, post-secondary education, and living in the community. All right, so the other big thing that families have to get used to is that once we get into teenagehood, adulthood, it shifts to the student. The student is going to be the one making choices. And you may say, oh, my student can't make choices. Even if they need a lot of support to make choices, everybody's going to start focusing on them. Right? You still have a right as a parent to go to the school meetings and to give feedback. The school may rely on you for information about the student. You may want to share your family's values and dreams in order to help the student in this, their goal making and the choices. But the focus really is on the student and where the student wants to go and what the student wants to do. So that's uh, uh, throughout the when I'm still in school between 14 and 18 or 14 and 21, that's the policy. It's called self-determination, and all the planning is person-centered planning. So all the plans are based on who the student is, what the student likes, and what the student wants to do. Right? Not you. So some tips for parents, because the transition services in the high school get started, and a lot of times parents don't know what their role is. Remember I said your role is changing? They don't know what the rights are, all right? It's very helpful if you can prepare your child to make choices, all right? The school should be providing experiences and opportunities. So for example, if you think about work, sometimes it's easy to see the work examples. So they should be trying different jobs. Maybe they should be visiting job sites. Maybe they should be doing some tests to see what jobs your child can do. And they should be involving community partners such as vocational rehabilitation. I'll explain what vocational rehabilitation is in a moment. And then if this is not going on, you can jump in and help your child advocate. And you should make sure that the school is doing what they're supposed to do. The law says they have to help your child get ready for adulthood. They also have to help you apply for adult services as soon as possible, right? So these things should be going on. And if they're not, you may have to really advocate for your family. Now I'm going to talk about the service system after school. All right. So it's a very decentralized system. It's not like first you do this, then you do that, then you do this. Because think about it, all the adults you know, even yourself, there's a general path when we grow up, but really everybody's life is totally different. Okay, so once your child leaves school, there's basically 4 avenues or streams where they might be getting services from. And I'm really just going to give you a basic overview, but you can go to their websites and get more information. And I've plugged all of that in here. So we have vocational rehabilitation, developmental disabilities administration. There's also some private agencies out there. And then there's what we call natural supports. So vocational rehabilitation, unfortunately, it has a different name in every state. I think most people here are from Maryland. It's called DOORS, the Division of Rehabilitation Services. But just in case, because we're regional, Virginia, it's DARS. In Delaware, it's DVR. In New York, it's VESID. Right? So that can be a little confusing for parents. So when you're looking for information on vocational rehabilitation in Maryland, it's called DOORS. Now, they work with anybody disabled, not just autistic people, and they are only focused on employment. They're not going to help you with housing. They're not going to help you live in the community. They're not really going to help you with academics per se, unless that's for a job, right? Their whole focus is to get and keep a job. It's focused on employment tasks. Okay. Traditionally, they did not really work on workplace social skills, community living, transportation, etc. There are a few exceptions, right? But by and large, it's just employment, right? The support they give is short-termed. So once you're hired, your case is done. There's often very long waiting lists, right? They are mandated to serve people with the most challenging disabilities first. Okay, so if your child can talk, they can take a bus, they can do different things, they're going to be on the wait list much longer. All right. Now, vocational rehabilitation will go in and start with children who are still in high school. All right. They are actually required by law. It's called pre-ETS, pre-employment training services. So you're not training for a job yet. It's before all of that. So for example, they will go into high schools, or the high schooler will visit vocational rehabilitation and take tests to see what careers they might want to do. Vocational rehabilitation can offer career exploration. This is in the pre-ETS. They may have a program for social skills at work. They may do transportation training. All right. So that's what I meant by there's a few exceptions. All right. And that's why I keep saying to parents, make sure your child is being connected to vocational rehabilitation. All right. They should have a vocational rehabilitation representative at the IEP meeting. All right. Preparing your child for post-school employment. Okay, but so then back to after school. VR is the kind of system like you can go in and out your whole life. So if you get a job, you're doing fine, great. But then let's say later in your 20s, you can't do that job anymore, or there's new circumstances, or you get fired and you need support again, you can go back to VR. So it's not just like a one-time option only. Okay. Like I said, vocational rehabilitation is mostly focused on employment, but there are some programs that will support your child in college if that's part of a job plan. All right. Some states also have grants to start self-employment, which can be very good for some autistic adults. I know someone who's really good at tuning pianos. And so their family was able to get a grant for him to start a piano tuning business. And he just goes around and tunes people's pianos, and that really works for him. So, like I said, they're mandated to serve the most significantly disabled people first. So your child may wait for a while, right? So you want to be thinking, what can my child do in the meantime? So they're not just like stuck on the couch watching TV, getting bored and frustrated. Also, remember, vocational rehabilitation is there to support the autistic person. So the vocational rehabilitation counselors usually will not talk to parents or family members. So even if someone needs a lot of support to make decisions, vocational rehabilitation is really going to try hard to make sure that the autistic person's voice is being honored. Right. There are a few exceptions where, for example, you can sign permission forms, etc. But they're even in that case, they're really going to default to the autistic person. It can be very overwhelming. The VR system is, it never has enough counselors, it never has enough staff. So you really have to speak up for yourself. And that can be frustrating. You do have the right, if you call your counselor over and over again and you're not getting answers and you're not getting support, you can ask for a new counselor. So we also have the Developmental Disabilities Administration, right? That's DDA for short, and they provide services after age 21. Again, there's always a few exceptions, but by and large, it's for when your child is after 21. And they will provide that lifelong support to live and work in the community. Okay, so they're the ones, for example, who run group homes, or they run agencies that will help your child get a job and live in the community and keep learning all those skills that they need. All right. Now, DDA doesn't actually provide the services. What they do is they see if your child's eligible, and then they certify agencies to provide the actual supports. They also manage the funds that they get from taxes. Okay. There's about 220 DDA approved agencies in Maryland. It's a lot, right? The eligibility criteria are very complicated. Right. What parents need to understand is the DDA system was developed when we stopped putting people into institutions. All right, but what they said is in order to get DDA services in your home community, you still have to have that institutional level of care need. So what that means is if it was the old days, you'd probably be in one of those institutions. That's how much support that you need. All right. That can actually be very hard for some autistic people to meet because they often do have a lot of skills. And so that can be very tricky. So if you need an advocate to help you navigate this system, reach out to autism organizations. They can sometimes provide a parent mentor who went through this and who can help you and advise you. Again, there's a lot of wait lists. So parents think, oh, well, DDA will take over it the day he turns 21. No, right? They're going to provide stuff once you reach 21, but you could be waiting years because, like I said, these systems are very overwhelmed. So if you think your child might qualify for DDA, apply as early as your state allows you to. You don't have to, don't wait until the day they're 21, because like I said, there's all those wait lists. You're going to need a lot of records. You're going to need doctor's reports. You're going to need school records. You're going to need everything. So keep that in a notebook. If your child is young now, great. Start keeping all of that in a big file. Also, at any point, even if your child's still young, you can go start looking around at those service provider agencies that provide the actual services. Go on tours, talk to the staff, look at ratings, ask other parents, like, where did your kid go? And, start sharing that information with each other. If you qualify for DDA, you're going to need to pick what's called a service coordinator to help you get your services. Now, those service coordinators should be in the school system at IEP meetings, because what they're doing is they're helping you prepare and get ready for once your child's 21. All right. There's also private agencies like maybe your church or nonprofit. Start looking now, because like I said, even if you qualify for DDA, you qualify for VR, you might be waiting a long time. All right. So what's your child going to do in the meantime? Right. There may be classes, there may be training programs, there may be recreational opportunities to be in the community to keep them busy. All right. So you got to find those and figure it all out now. And same thing with natural supports, by which I mean natural supports are anything that it's not an organization, it's just in the person's world. So again, it's never too early to start looking at your world and see who's there. And sometimes parents are shy. I understand that. But most people love it if you call them up and you ask, So if your neighbor is a great gardener, maybe they need an assistant. Maybe grandma can start teaching how to do the laundry. Maybe that uncle of yours could let your child try a job in the summer. We all use natural supports. But I think autistic people need help to think about this and to put it together. So anyway, just to review the adult system, remember, it's all eligibility based. Nothing is promised. The programs are very vulnerable to wait lists. The funding can get cut. It's also self-advocacy based. So that's why self-advocacy skills are so important. I think, like I keep saying, plan for the possibility of long waits or not getting the services, and how can you fill in those gaps with the natural supports. Again, emphasis on having all that documentation ready and making sure that the school is connecting your child to the adult service system. All right, so I want to talk for a few minutes now about employment, post-secondary education, and community life. Again, I'm just going to give the highlights here. So we just talked about some agencies like VR, DDA that will come in and provide that employment support. I really want families to start asking for and looking for customized employment. I don't have time tonight to give you a whole class on customized employment. The key point of customized employment is that the team really looks at your child and what they can do, and then they try to find a place in the world that needs that talent or skill or interest. All right. And what this does is it reduces sometimes the challenges that we typically see, because we're making very careful matches. Right. So if your child can't deal with fluorescent lights, I'm not putting them in a job that has fluorescent lights. The problem with other models of support is they can work sometimes, right? Sometimes maybe your disabled teenager wants to be a cashier at Walmart and they can do it. Okay. We'll never say no. But the thing is, a lot of times that's not the best way for our strengths to show. It's sort of like putting a round peg in a square hole. Customized employment can really look, and especially if people have more significant challenges. I'll give you a quick example. I worked with a gentleman who loved water, and he was always outside in the yard with the hose. He would spend hours watering the side of the house, the sidewalk, and at school, guess what? He was always in trouble because he would make a beeline for the sink. He always wanted to have the water running. He wanted to play with water. So you can see it was a big problem at school. Well, lo and behold, the team discovered if you go to the supermarket, and sometimes those carts are really gross, you know. So the team had an idea and they approached supermarkets in the area and they said, oh, yeah, we never clean them because we just don't have time. Our cashiers are running around. It's low priority, but it would be really nice because we could kind of advertise, especially with COVID and the pandemic. Hey, we've got sanitary carts. So they got a grant for a mobile washing unit. And he goes around from supermarket to supermarket, and guess what? He gets to play with the hose. He's happy, it works. So we can really match the person to something that's going to work for them. There's some examples in here. I also put videos, go and watch the videos, see customized employment in action, and just really look for those customized employment programs, or at least look for providers who know what you're talking about, right? It really is, important to try to get your teenager some work experience. The research shows that that's correlated to the best success later on. But keep in mind, too often I see that they'll try some job or something and then there's some problems and they immediately say, oh, you see, he's not employable. They're teenagers. Lots of teenagers, even if they're not autistic, they try a job, they get fired because they'd rather go to the beach with their girlfriend or who knows. They're kids, right? So they need time to grow up. And neurodivergent teenagers, if you go back to that human development slide at the beginning, they may need even longer time. We see this a lot with autistic college graduates. They do great in class. They have a 4.0 GPA, but then they graduate and they're back at home. And it's because they're just not ready developmentally for full-time employment. That's okay. But if we know this, then we can plan as a family and we can say, okay, he's going to need a little bit longer to grow up. She's going to need more time to figure herself out and get ready for all the responsibilities of adulthood. So can they do a gap year? Could they do some service? Can they go to graduate school? Could they have a slower path to self-sufficiency? And I think it's important to not give up. It's very natural for young adults to change their mind, try a lot of things, fail a few things. That's natural. It's not time to panic and think my kid can't do anything. No, they're young. Okay. College, the big points I want to mention here, there's no special education in college. You can get accommodations, like if you need more time for tests, you need to sit in the front row. Okay. You need to record lectures. Those are reasonable accommodations, but you're taking the same classes, you're doing the same homeworks, you're doing the same curriculum. All right, so that's very different. I do want to point out, because a lot of people don't realize it, but our state in Maryland and other states too, they frequently have programs for autistic college students who have intellectual disabilities. So don't rule it out. If your person has more significant impacts, there still may be a college program. And I mention that because there's so many benefits beyond just taking classes. I also want to point out that many colleges now have support programs for autistic college students, but they typically are not included in the tuition. That's a program that vocational rehabilitation might help you pay for. So ask for that. The autistic college programs, they really vary very widely. So go and visit, talk to other parents, really get your information together. One thing I definitely want two things I want to emphasize. One, if you're gonna get accommodations at college, you have to have proof of disability from the last 5 years, sometimes 3. So that's often parents are not prepared for that. They start applying for college, kid got diagnosed with autism at age 4 or in 6th grade. That's too old. You're gonna have to update that. Okay, The other thing I want to emphasize is we really value college in American society, but not everyone's ready at 18 or ever. And that's okay. It's okay to take the pressure off and say, she's going to do something different. Or she may go, but not yet. Or she may go, but just take 1 or 2 classes to get used to it. All right. So really plan for those adjustment times if they need more time before they're ready for college, or if they need more time after college. All right. I think, we know now that just because autistic people may have challenges, that doesn't mean that they don't care about other people or they don't want friends. It may look different. All right. Uh, and that's okay too. We don't need everybody to be, cookie cutter norm, what is normal anyway. Um, but it can be very difficult for autistic people to plug themselves in, and they're very vulnerable to getting very, very isolated. So help them find those places where they're accepted for who they are. If they have a special interest, plug them in. Let's say your kid loves batteries, they know the history of batteries. Join like the American Battery Association. I'm making that up. That's a hypothetical example. I don't know if there's really an American Battery Association. The point I'm making is if they love something, great. Help them connect to other people who love it too. Right. And a lot of times parents will say to me, well, he likes childish things, so I don't know what to do. Well, over here is a picture of an adult Lego club. On the left, you'll see the adults playing with Legos together. And on the top corner, that is a Bronies Club. I don't know if anybody's heard of this. I didn't hear of this until I started working with somebody who's a Brony. They are adults who love My Little Pony. They collect them, they trade them, they go to the movies together, they sit around and talk about My Little Ponies. So whatever your child's interested in, it's okay. You don't need to be embarrassed, but help them find other adults to do it with. All right, because that's how they're gonna get connected to the community. That's how they're gonna be less vulnerable. All right, a few must-haves real quick. All right, communication system goes without saying. You may say, well, I understand him, but the rest of the world may not. So everyone needs a communication system. Self-regulation, I'm going to assume people understand the basics of that. That's like if you're really angry at the store clerk because the checkout line is taking a long time, you can't throw a can of soup at them. You're going to get arrested. All right. So we can respect diversity, but we do have a consensus about behavior in public and in private. Anyway, 5-point scales can be a really great strategy. This comes out of cognitive behavior therapy. So what you're doing is there's different levels or amounts of emotion, and it doesn't have to be negative like anger. It can also be positive like happy. Like if you're at a level 5 happy and you just won the lotto, you probably could jump and shout a little bit, but you shouldn't be like screaming so loud that like the building goes on lockdown or something. So anyway, there's different levels and there's descriptions of the levels, and then there's also options. Okay, so you'll see here level 3, starting to feel out of control, taking deep breaths. Okay. We can tie these to special interests. So this person had a special interest in weather. I know it's a little blurry, but it gives you the concept. All right, and the idea is we're trying to keep somebody at level 1, like calm, sunny day, doing well. All right, but you can see as the amount increases, they may have to take steps to take care of themselves. Okay. This is a very bad example. All right. It's not well defined. What is too annoying? What are you talking about? You're talking about a behavior, the volume of their voice. It's not clear. Also, the negative language here could really hurt somebody's feelings. So we don't want to do that. Okay. Like it says, oh, you're being annoying. No, there's maybe some behavior we want to work on, but human beings, like we don't want to tell a child you're annoying. Right? It also doesn't give any suggestions. So if I'm at level 5, what do I do? Do I get a grown up to help me? Do I take a break? Do I take deep breaths? It doesn't say anything. There's a great guide for teenagers and adults by Carrie Dunbar, A 5 is Against the Law. Highly recommend that book. Again, these are infinitely tailorable to the individual. So, you know, if someone has more cognitive issues, maybe you use 3 levels instead of 5. You don't have to use colors. You could use more pictures. Try to get the person to build these as much as possible. At least let them pick out the colors. Have them come up with the suggestions. Like when you're at a level 5 and you're really angry, and you can tell because your heart's racing and you're starting to yell a lot, what do you think would help you calm down? You know, what do you think is good to do at a level 5? See if you can get them to generate that. Also, I know I've worked with teenagers who are, you know, not that open to this, or they think, you know, they don't want to walk around with their 5-point scale, you know, but now we can like use them on the phone. So they kind of look like everybody else is using their phone. So it might be more acceptable. We call that like, uh, you know, peer acceptable method. So that's an option. I also really encourage parents. I know this can be somewhat uncomfortable for some families, but everybody needs to know the name of their disability. They need language. They know, you know, if your child only had one arm and everybody could see they only have one arm, you would teach your child how to talk about it. You would explain that they can still do things. They just might need, you know, an accommodation. You would also teach them what to do if the other kids made fun of them. It's the same thing, even though you can't see the autism. All right. It's also really important to teach them about disability in society, that we have fought really hard for rights and we have a right to be included. And a lot of self-advocates really thrive when they have an opportunity to be in a disability community. This is a gentleman over here on the lower right-hand corner who was speaking at Congress. So there's lots of ways that they can get involved, but they need to know what the laws are, all right? And you can tailor it to their level of understanding, but don't forget to give them this information, because otherwise people just feel they know they're different, and can internalize that you know people don't like them, and so it can be very helpful for them. Or you know, here I one of the first days when I worked as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, there was a gentleman, and he had no idea he was autistic. He had never been given any information, and the other kids teased him, and they said, "Oh, you're the autistic." I don't want to use the word because we don't use that language. And he was so upset. That's not the first time that you want your kid finding out about this, right? Talk to them because you love them. You're going to explain it in a loving way, that they're different and that's okay. It's not bad, but they just need this information so they can take care of themselves, right? Okay. So I do this thing called loneliness reduction plans. Basically, in a nutshell, there's a lot of information here, but the gist of it is you're planning in advance some of those healthy preferred activities, because we keep finding autistic adults very isolated, very vulnerable. And you know, when you're feeling lonely and you don't have friends, it's harder to make good choices for yourself. It's easier to get involved in things like drugs, etc. So we really want to make sure that they're plugged in. All right. Again, some kids, if you say loneliness reduction plan, they're gonna screen you out. You don't even necessarily need to write it down, but that's the concept. All right. They might be less resistant to if they have like a same age peer, like a cool cousin or a college student who, you know, wants to work with disabled adults and could be like a mentor. The main idea is just to make sure that the person is connected, they're engaged, whatever that looks like for them. Again, you're not trying to make them normal, but you're trying to help them find, like that example I gave a while ago. If they love batteries, go find the battery club. Okay. Sexuality education, again, a lot of parents find this very uncomfortable. I can't stress it enough. They've got to know about sex, about their bodies, and also about consent and values and relationships. And it's really, really important because autistic teenagers and young adults and children too are much higher rates of sexual abuse and getting into bad relationships, and winding up in challenging situations, which is really not their fault. It's just nobody told them, but there can be really severe consequences. I put some links here. True disclosure, the ABA tech video, it's a paid video and I helped create it. So I have to put out that there's that whatever it is, financial interest or whatever. But it's a good series. So I included it. The Amaze website is also good because it's got multicultural resources too. So you can find information in different languages, for example. Okay, so again, I want to stress, sometimes parents will say, well, I gave him the basics. I told him the words for the body and, the basics of sex and that kind of thing. But they forget this part. And consent and boundaries is really huge in our society. All right. So they need to know language around this. They need to practice. Okay. No one is going to give them a pass when they're an adult just because they're autistic. Okay, so they cannot be violating other people's personal space. All right. Um, and I want to stress that, a lot of times people think, oh, well, you're talking like sex, romance, so people the same age, etc. No, it's all relationships, right? So you can't touch a cute baby at the zoo. You're not allowed to do that. I don't care how cute you think the baby is. You have to ask the parent. And if the parent says no, you have to be able to say, okay, I'm not allowed. I'm going to walk away. Right? Sometimes we tolerate a lot of this in children because it's cute, but it's not cute when you're a grown up. Right? And you can get arrested. Okay, so we really have to teach about boundaries and consent too. All right, just a few concluding thoughts, and then we're going to move to questions and answers. So I want to emphasize that autistic adults are really the experts. So I encourage you, look at their websites. Autistic adults have written books, and I don't mean just like autistic adults who talk and, maybe they're, you know, maybe have some struggles, but they're going to go to college and live independently. There's books out there by people who use augmentative assistive communication. There's books out there by adults who have intellectual disability. Um, I want to stress everybody, all human beings need to communicate. They need to be able to tell you what's going on, what their experiences are. Um, and I think that sometimes we're so used to planning everything for our disabled kids and making sure they get everything they need. And that's what I mean. It can be difficult for parents to step back and change your role. And yes, you're always going to be there for them, and they may always need your help and support, but now they have to kind of take over this journey, and we have to give them a chance to try to have a good life, whatever that looks like for them. And they are going to fail some things and they're going to struggle, and that's part of human life to some extent. Of course, if they're struggling too much, and I understand disability is a different factor, but sometimes I see parents hover a bit with autistic adults and don't let them take a chance to go down to the pizzeria or to make friends with that person or to sign up for a class. And you know what? You might struggle too much and fail and drop the class, and then maybe you might try again in a couple of years, and that's okay. This is natural for adults. So I just want to emphasize that we're much more like everybody else than not. I think that's important to think about. So what if you said to me, well, okay, Zosia, what do we need? Well, you need kind of a roadmap, because remember I said there can be delays. All right. You really want to read about the adult service system, think about what your kid's going to need, and start applying for things, getting that documentation together. The supports, strategies, some of them I put in here, like the 5-point scales, reducing loneliness, right? Getting connected to a community where you're accepted, right? Respect for human diversity. That's really important. I think autistic adults really need that. They need to hear that from you because they're going to get a lot of bias from society. That's enough bias, right? They need to feel that the people around them still love them. And we need each other. So that wraps up my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing. We'll go into Q&A. But I did put some here, some more videos, articles to read, that kind of thing. And I will also make sure people have my email address also.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zaks. So we'll give our audience a little bit time if they prefer to put the questions into the chat box. We already have one. I will read it. But I just wanted to say it's such an informative presentation that parents all start to ask recording 5 minutes after you started. And I wish I had access to this information you shared earlier. As a mom of a 13-year-old autistic child and a special educator myself, I learned so much, especially about how we can start preparing our children for adulthood early on. You know, it's never too late to learn, and it's never too early to plan your children into adulthood. You gave us many practical ideas and reminders to think long term. And now we will just open it up for questions from our audience. And the first question is, when should we apply DORS doors in Maryland?
That's a great question. If your child is a teenager, the school should be plugging them in to some DOORS services. For example, that career testing or some of those exploration opportunities or some of the social skills for work kind of classes. So talk to your school, find out what's going on. If it's not happening, push for it, advocate for it. If it's after school and they're outside the school system, you can apply for DOORS anytime. But again, keep in mind, it's an overwhelmed system. So you may call 10 times and you might get the answer on the 11th call. So you got to be perseverant and keep calling. Some of the counselors have 500 people in their caseload. Okay. So, don't give up. I know a lot of families call me and they just give up. And I'm like, you got to just keep calling, keep asking. If that counselor doesn't work out, ask for a different counselor, go to a different field office. Maybe go in person. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So the next question we have is, any tips for female middle schoolers to make friends and maintain friendships?
That's a very good question. And things can be different for girls and women on the spectrum, just because our society is different and what we expect for girls and women can be different. So what I would say is look at what she's interested in and go off that. All right. So if she's very, very quiet and she likes books, okay, maybe a reading club, and it may not even be at the school. Maybe the public library is a better shot. Like if she goes to school with girls who are like really loud and very cliquish and they're not very accepting, that sucks and we could try to fix it. But in the meantime, so she doesn't feel totally left out and totally lonely, we could plug her into a nice book club at the local library and she might meet some quiet girls there. So that's what I would say. Start with her interests.
Thank you. And the next question is, in one of your slides, you said autistic adults need to advocate for themselves. And what's your suggestion for those who have difficulty to communicate?
Well, that is why on the other slide I said a communication system is so important. All right, so whether that's going to be using ASL or maybe they use a device and they type what they want and the device says it, or even text message, But yeah, try to figure out what is the best way, or pictures. There are picture communication systems. All right, so if your child doesn't have a system of communication, bring that up with the school because that is absolutely a skill that they need in order to learn, in order to reach goals, in order to make choices. And there's actually kind of a movement now to make communication a human right. So But I think in another way that I could answer your question is, again, like when you're going, let's say, to meetings, or you're going to meet a vocational counselor, for example, you can think in advance, uh, what's going to help that meeting work. All right. So, for example, if they have a lot of sensory issues with bright lights and loud noise, you can request a quiet meeting place. Right. I think it's also okay. Let's say I have a kid who can answer questions, but it can take a long time. Right. So it's okay in your role as a support advocate to be like, they can answer your questions, they're just going to need more time to answer them. So if the counselor is getting frustrated and turning to you, you can let them know, no, he can answer, just give him more time, or let him put it on paper, or let him, pick a picture to explain to you, So, so I guess that's the two answers: is make sure they've got a really good communication system, and then number two, you can be like an advocate by their side, but just make sure that their voice is still coming through. And then there was a third thing that flashed into my mind. Okay. For parents of young kids, this is a good opportunity to start when they're young, right? Even if it's completely non-consequential. Do you want vanilla or chocolate? 2-year-olds have really like no idea, but they're practicing. And then they get used to the idea, oh, I picked chocolate and I didn't really like it so much. Okay, good information. Next time I'll pick vanilla. Like they're getting used to choice making. So any way that you can build that into their life will be helpful.
All right. Dr. Chow, do you have a question? I saw that you raised your hand.
Yes. First, thank you, Zosia. It's really a great talk. I was, so all the time I'm just listening. After listening your talk, I feel a little bit heavy-hearted because I heard a lot of like waitlist and like not promised, and also like a funding cut. And my son right now is 12 years old. After 10 years, um I don't think I have enough, like the energy level is not like now. So I'm thinking, in next 10 years I'm getting old, and I have to navigate all the system like VR and DDA or all this. And so is there like what, from the broad perspective, what do you think like future? Is there like the supporting system it will be getting better, or still will be like even? So do you have any like projection or what? Yeah.
It is hard to project the future. What I can say, unfortunately, our society does not have a good record of supporting disabled people and making sure there's enough money and making sure the system is easy for parents to figure out. We don't do that so well. So maybe that's the bad news. But the good news is that many, many families have gone through this too. So what I would suggest, precisely to help you with the energy and taking care of yourself, get in touch with other parents. Like if you don't have a parent group yet, find your parent group, because that's how you're gonna really lean into them when things get tough. And they'll also know, like they'll give you tips. They'll be like, oh, you're applying to doors, call this field office and get that counselor instead of that counselor. Like they'll know because they're in it too, and you guys can share, your support. So I think that's the best thing for parents, is to get connected to other families.
So if there are now a lot of counselors, like short of staff, so the not like adult, like autistic adults, they just stay home and play what they don't have. I mean, if they cannot find a job, and or what's your recommendation or suggestion how they spend their time? Because no school, and it seems to me it's in the school system it seems bubbles. When adulthood is a bubble just broke, and yeah, and then it's a kind of a cruel world, and I just feel a little bit worried, and also yeah, just trying to like prepare myself.
I mean, you raise a lot of good points, and it can be very frustrating. We see too many kids leave the school system and then don't have what they need. But I think that that's why if you can start early, and like I said, those natural supports and plugging them into the community. So let's say they graduate high school and there's no employment support yet, so that they don't just have to sit on the couch. If you have them going to that club or volunteering at the zoo, or that uncle who will let them come in and do the recycling at his factory, whatever it is. So start building that now, because that will help you through the gaps. Yeah. And then plus they're not bored and sitting all alone in the house, right? Because let's say even if they're just going to that club or they're just volunteering once a week, so they're still practicing. They're practicing talking to other people, bringing their lunch, getting the bus. How do you not be too upset if you're late? All these things that can take some time to learn. So as long as they're learning and growing and doing something constructive, and that is so, but you can't do that overnight, right? So that's why I'm telling people start early. I wanted to go back 1 second to the person who was asking about friends in middle school, because they said that from their perspective, their daughter does seem to have some friends, but she thinks they're like really, really good friends, whereas the other friends are sort of not really, they're just kind of being charitable, like, oh, the disabled kid, I guess we have to include her. That's unfortunate when that happens. The question was like, do I tell her or not? It's hard for me to say because I'm not there. I don't know your daughter. I don't know how her self-esteem is, how her confidence is. I also don't really know what's going on with the girls. It might look like that to the adults, but we really don't know what's in their head. That's why I keep saying I veer more to just trying to build those connections that you do know are really authentic, you know? So like if she likes a certain craft, or she likes a certain TV character, or she likes, animals, like just get her connected, because then whatever's going on at school, she'll have those sincere, authentic connections elsewhere. Yeah.
All right, Dr. Zaks, we're going to answer 2 more questions about whether to disclose I am autistic in the job application. And there's a similar question. What are the pros and cons to disclose autism in college application? And after these 2 questions, we'll let Katie Zhang to ask another question.
So let me go back to the first one, and then you'll tell me the second one.
Okay.
Because it kind of goes in
Right.
my head. In fact, okay, so wait, the first question, what were we talking about?
Job application.
Job application disclosure. That's a hard question because we know that there's discrimination in the world. So I know minorities experience this too. They've done tests where they'll have the same skills, same college, same everything, but they'll put like Smith on the resume, and then they'll put Hernandez on the other resume, and the Hernandez gets no job offers. So it's unfortunate that we're dealing with this. I think the way that I can answer this question is that it really depends on the individual. Okay, so if you've got an individual who's very significantly impacted, all right, there's probably no way around it. Okay, they're probably going to be in a supported program, and so it's just known, okay, that they have a disability and they're trying to get a job. Okay, when someone may be more able to navigate, and it's a question because we have all this discrimination in society, one thing that some autistic adults have done is you can ask for accommodations. You don't have to disclose that you're autistic. Okay, you can say, I can do the job, I just can't deal with fluorescent lights because I have sensory issues. Lots of people have sensory issues, right? So you might be able to do it that way. The other thing too that I want to ask is, do you really want a job at a place where people are not open and comfortable? There's a lot of companies now. So if your child is able to have like a special skill of some sort, look for companies that want neurodivergent employees. For example, Microsoft has a huge neurodiversity hiring program. They want autistic people. They want people who are neurodivergent because we bring different things to the table. So maybe that's one way to go about it. Yeah.
Yeah, the second one is the pros and cons about listing autistic in a college application.
Well, again, I think there's less of an issue because a college is going to take a student because they want that student in their community, and the student has the right scores and the right mix of classes. So they're really looking at whatever it is that colleges look at. In fact, being autistic or neurodivergent might be, when you think about writing your college essay, for some kids, being autistic and learning how to cope with their diversity, how to advocate for themselves, those sometimes are skills that colleges really want, So I can't really speak to it. I can't say yes, disclose, or no, don't disclose. It depends on so many factors. But again, I keep going back to that question. Do you want to send your child to a college where people are not accepting and they have to hide who they are? I mean, part of college is enjoying yourself and getting to know other people who like you too. So what are we teaching the child if they have to hide it, right? Um, Plus, they may really need some accommodations to have a successful experience. And a lot of colleges get that, and they don't want it to be a shameful thing. That's why they have centers for neurodiversity. They have the neurodiversity club. They have the extra support for neurodiverse students. So I would be very skeptical if I was so worried to disclose and I'm about to go to college. I don't want to spend 4 of the best years of my life somewhere where I have to hide who I am all the time.
All right. So next, let's let Katie Zhang speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much, Dr. Zaks, for your great presentation. Thanks, Jeff, for hosting this. And I think Dr. Zaks, you mentioned a lot of the supporting system, but you didn't mention the healthcare supporting system, which is primarily Medicaid, I guess, for a lot of the autistic adults, and also the Medicaid waiver program. So what do you think about it? And
Okay.
also,
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess the second question is that based on like what you said, the public resources very limited for disabled, especially for autistic adults. So maybe like self-supporting. Oh, go ahead. Self-supporting among autistic adults and their families is very important. Like maybe autistic adults like of similar levels, they can maybe live together and support each other, things like that. Yeah. These are
Yeah.
the questions I have. Yeah.
Well, answering the second part first, right? That's what I was talking about with natural supports. And that's also why I said get connected to other parents. Okay, because if you all need the same thing, maybe you can buy it yourselves or put it together yourself. There's a lot of cases where 4 or 5 autistic families put their kids together in an apartment because they all kind of got along and had the same needs. All right, but you're not gonna find them if you don't know them, right? So going back to the waiver question of Medicaid. So when I talk about something like DDA, that is funded by Medicaid, all right? And so in the old days, if you were disabled and Medicaid was going to support you, you had to go to an institution. That was the only option. We were not providing services like in the community. Okay. Then disabled people sued. It was the Olmsted case of 1999. And basically, what was decided was that you can't force people to go to institutions. Right. And they started to close down. All right. So Medicaid will support you to live and work in your community. Okay. But so they're waiving the need to go to an institution. Right, so there's a couple of different streams, and it can get very confusing. So Medicaid is paying for DDA, all right, and the states also chip in, all right, and that's why it's different in every state. Some states do a lot of support, some states do barely any support, okay? And they have the different eligibility requirements, and they also offer different things, all right? So it gets very confusing. So you're looking at DDA and seeing if your kid's eligible and what's offered, right? The other thing that you're talking about is waiver programs. So again, it goes back to that thing where they waive, you don't have to go to an institution anymore. You can get the same services at home in your neighborhood. Okay. But every single state has different waiver programs. Okay. So in Maryland, we're lucky. We have a Medicaid funded waiver program for autistic children. All right. And if you get into the waiver program, there's a ton of supports that you can get. Because a lot of families say, well, he goes to the school building in the morning and he gets supports at school, but then he comes home and what do we do? Right. So, because the school is not going to come to your house at night and teach her how to brush her teeth or help you know what to do if she's having, a meltdown from stress. Right. So the waiver program, the waiver for autistic children in Maryland, okay, can be very helpful. The thing is, there's 1,000 slots. As far as I know, the wait list closed like years ago, so I don't even know if you can get on the wait list. I haven't checked recently. Okay, I think there was a list to get on the wait list. All right, so again, I'm not trying to discourage you. All right. If you think that would be very helpful for your family, go find out, see if you can be, if you can get on that wait list, if there's any slots available. In Maryland, we don't have any waiver program that's specific for autistic adults. Okay. But we have waiver programs to live in the community, and some adults may meet eligibility for those programs. Again, the best thing is as your kid becomes a teenager is start researching. You can look at the DDA website. You can look at Medicaid waivers for Maryland. You can Google that and see what waivers we have in this state. See if any of them might help your kid. If your kid has something else besides autism, for example, we have a traumatic brain injury waiver in Maryland. Okay, so they might qualify under physical disability or mental health, something like that. Okay, but the what waiver programs are available changes by state, and it can even change in the state sometimes. So I don't want to give the wrong information. So to get the most up-to-date information, go to the state websites, go to DDA, see what's available. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question. But so yes, Medicaid is funding some of these things. Again, like I said, it's eligibility based. So that's really important to realize. You're going to have to apply, your person is going to have to apply, right? And it can be very discouraging for parents. The process is very complicated. But that's another reason to get in touch with other parents and find that network of parents to get through this together, because that's who's the best to help each other and to share that common experience of trying to make the system work for your family.
Thank you so much. I'm from New Jersey. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Right. I know there's people here from all different states too, right? So you got to check what's going on in your particular state.
Yeah, we do have DMV and like DC, Maryland, and Virginia WeChat group. Like all the Chinese parents in that group, and we share and connect and discuss all the challenges we have been faced. So yeah, so
Another good option is there's Autism Society of America, and they have, I'm trying to put it in the chat to everybody. Hang on a second. They have different chapters all over the place. So they may have a chapter in your state, and they often have parent groups. They often have parent advocates, like parents who volunteered to talk to families. We are also lucky in Maryland, we have an organization called Pathfinders, and they have a ton of information. They have workshops. They even have like recreational nights for families where like everybody will go to the zoo or the aquarium. I'm looking to see if I can find the URL. So that's, I don't know if they have that in your state, but I think the Autism Society of America is a good first place to look. And if you're in Maryland, or even in this general area, I encourage you to check out Pathfinders.
All right, I think we have a few more questions here. And I wanted to ask, I think I read somewhere, a parent from New Jersey. So, you know, there are a bunch of kids who are more high functioning, so they don't qualify for those services because they are eligible based. So a group of parents, they are financially able. I mean, although the kids, they are able to secure a job, even if it's a very simple job, but they, you know, all the parents, they just did a co-op thing. Like they bought a few apartments together, and each of the kids will stay in one unit, like a 1-bedroom unit. And then parents will take turns, like to take them out. Not all of them can drive, or, you know, we feel safe for them to drive. And they will be doing something together, like social activities together. What do you think of that model?
I think that's great, you know, and that's what a lot of families are doing. I know here in Baltimore, there's a dessert place called Zoe's Desserts, and the same thing. The family was frustrated with the different options, and so they started a dessert cafe, and their daughter works there, and now other autistic adults work there also. That hire pretty
That's
much.
awesome.
I think everybody who works there is autistic.
I love it. And also there's a car wash place, I think. They hire all the kids with Down syndrome or autism, other developmental disabilities.
I mean, again, the criticism is that you're creating a situation where pretty much they only see other autistic people.
Right.
Okay, but sometimes this can be the best way for them to have a good life and be out in the community. You just want to make sure that they do have chances to hang out with non-autistic people too. You know, but yeah, I think creating a place to live or a place to work can be really great, you know, if a bunch of families can do that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Our next question is, what are common accommodations college usually offer? Should the student inform the teachers immediately after he selects the courses?
Well, colleges have certain rules for how things go. All right. So every college has an office of disability. All right. They call it something different, you know, disability office, accommodations office, disability services office. So in order to get accommodations, you have to go through them. All right. So you call them, and then they are looking at your paperwork. And that's why I said you have to have a recent diagnosis. Right? If it's more than 5 years, sometimes even more than 3 years, they'll say, "Oh, you need to get tested again." Right? And then there's a delay. So don't let that happen to you. Make sure you go with a current diagnosis. And ideally, when you get diagnosed, a good therapist who does the testing will list what they think should be some of the accommodations. All right. So you bring your paperwork to the disability office, and then they decide. Okay. And so if they say, okay, your child can have untimed tests, your child can record lectures, there'll be a piece of paper with the accommodation. Again, it's a self-advocacy system, and this can be very hard for kids to do, but they have to give the paper to the professor. Right? Now, I'm just going to be real with you. Some professors are really good about this. They're very open. They're like, great, got it, no problem. Other professors, not so nice. Okay. So it can be really hard for a kid to realize that. And they may want to, like, if there's a professor who's really unwilling or kind of judges them a lot, maybe they want to switch to a different class. You know, that happens a lot. Um, So short answer to your question, when you're applying, even before you get there, look at the college's disability office and try to get a sense. Are they really helpful? Do they give parents lots of information, or are they very like, oh, we don't really want to do this, because you want to go somewhere where you're going to walk in and they're going to be able to give you, the guidance that you need and the support that you need. But that's, to me, that's the hardest part, is for the student. It's the first time really in their life that they have to bring the piece of paper and show it and request the services. And that can be very hard for some of them. So that's why, okay, so in answer to your question, what accommodations do colleges give? They're pretty much tied to the academics. Okay, so like I said, you need more time on the test. Okay. Of course, depending on the disability, for example, if your child had a service animal, they have to allow the service animal in the dorm. Okay. So in that sense, I guess, is that academic? I don't know. I know that a lot of neurodivergent students will get what they call medical single. And what that means is typically you have a roommate and you have to sleep together in the same room. And that can be too hard for some autistic people. Okay. So they can get a single room at the same rate. They don't charge them more money because it's a disability. Right. But that's why you have to have a recent diagnostic test that says these are all the things this person needs. Right. The college has to see those records. Okay. Now, one of the reasons why so many colleges have started a Center for Neurodiversity is precisely because autistic students sometimes need the kind of help that traditional disability offices don't give, such as the social support. Okay. I saw someone in there was like, what about daily life skills? I don't know any colleges that really do the daily life skills per se. They're assuming that if you're going to college, you can cook a pizza in a microwave, or figure out and get on the shuttle and take the shuttle to the cafeteria. They'll help a little bit, but if your person really struggles with daily life skills, I don't, the college may not, the college and or the neurodiversity group may not be able to offer enough support that your student needs, but it can't hurt to ask them, right? But this is why you need to be like calling and visiting and seeing what is offered and what is not offered before they get there.
Great, thank you, Dr. Zaks. All right, next one is more specific. Do you know any counselor referral for high-functioning autistic young adult in Washington State? Any good social program for young adults in Washington College?
I mean, I'm very much focused on the East Coast, so I'm not that familiar with Washington College, but I do have some colleagues in Washington, in the Seattle area, and I could email them. So if you're in a state and you're like, I need some resources here, email me. I can't promise, but I'll try my best. I can email some colleagues and be like, hey, this person's looking for a counselor, or they're at this college and want to find out, what's available. And I can try to connect you with somebody.
Thank you. And the last one we have in the chat box is today, and is what options we have if he cannot have a job after 21.
Okay, so if someone is not going to work, traditionally, that's where DDA, the Developmental Disabilities Administration, can provide longer term supports. Okay, because I'm guessing from your question, I don't know, but I'm guessing from your question that they're not going to be working, so they don't really need the employment support, but they might need housing support, or they might need support to go into the community and do things in the community. That's like a DDA picture, because DDA is long-term, lifelong for people who have more significant impacts of disability. But again, don't wait until 21. Start applying now. And if they're a teenager, start making sure the school has a service coordinator. Because like I said, the way DDA works, first they see if you're eligible. Okay, if you're eligible, then next you have to pick what agency you're going to go to. All right, some of you may have heard of some of them, like the ARC is an agency. All right, so, I know you asked about not work, but let me just give, like, for example, here in the Baltimore area, the ARC has an employment readiness program for people who want to work outdoors in landscaping. All right, but if you go to Humanum for services, they don't have a landscaping working program. All right, so that's what I mean. You've got to look at the agencies and see what they offer. All right, and so some of them are focused on employment, some of them are focused on residential. Okay, so some of them do both. Right, some of them are offering kind of the traditional group home situation. Some of them don't. Some of them have people living in apartment units with someone else who needs similar services. So that way, the social worker can go to like one place, So I think that that's what you're asking is people who have more significant disabilities. You're looking at a DDA kind of situation.
All right. The next question, I think, Dr. Zaks, you may need to share with us all your colleagues' contact information. Do you have any colleagues in Canada?
In Canada. Again, like off the top of my head, I can't throw out any names at the moment, but I'm putting my email in the chat, and I can certainly ask. I can ask around and help you try to get connected to somebody.
That's awesome. So I think that's our last question today. So, Dr. Chow, please.
Yeah, I have another question. I know you mentioned the Zoe's desserts. Do you have like resource like in like Maryland, which store or which place there's welcome to autistic like when they grow up they can work there. So we might like I can bring my son there to get early exposure and to know, oh, maybe there's a place in the future because my son loves cooking. So maybe I can, just have like an early exposure.
I think just Zoe's Just Desserts is the only one that's coming to my mind at the moment. We had a cafe, but it closed down. It was called Sam's Cafe, but it didn't work out business wise in the pandemic. But Zoe's Just Desserts, they also have like fun nights, like Star Wars night or open mic or whatever. And so maybe your child could start going down there and seeing some things or maybe job shadow. Job shadowing is like you get to try it a little bit, but just like a little, like he probably can't use an oven or something like that because it comes under regulations, but he could go there and he could see what's going on and he might be able to try one or two of the tasks. Again, I think if you plug into, some of the the Society of America chapters, they frequently will know like the businesses that are amenable to hiring autistic people. We have a chapter in Howard County, and they're based in Howard County, but they serve all of the whole state. And they have an employment readiness program for autistic college students who graduated college but are really struggling and can't find a job. That may not fit your situation, but my point is like they know a lot of these programs. They know a lot of the cafes, the things that parents are trying to do, the housing, the businesses. So I would get in touch with those agencies because I mean, the Autism Society of America chapters are very grassroots.
We are in the like the Baltimore Chesapeake chapter, so we receive constant like, emails. I Yeah, I subscribed, so I have an email information from there. So for is there like a certain like program can maybe my son's still early, maybe after maybe 10, 14, they have certain life skill like some job training program to like guide them, right? So right now still he's 12, so probably still too early to
Yeah, the official programs really start more like in high school, partially because of the insurance and the liability. But you can do a lot of like the natural supports.
Mhm.
Like if you have a favorite bakery, stop by and say, "Hey, my kid is really interested. Can he just watch? Can he see what goes on here?" You know, or maybe he can fold some of the boxes. You know, so you know, tap into people you know, places you go, your relatives, and give him as much chances as you can to see jobs, to try them, or at least to meet the people who do them.
Thank you.
Can we say that don't rely on the government for employment for your children? Try to use as much as your own resources, such as natural support, private support, anything that you can think of, anything you can reach and access. Is that right, Dr. Zaks?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, there are programs and services out there, but I think leaning into natural supports is always very good.
Okay.
And that you can start anytime. And
Thank
then
you.
you have that network there, right? For the times that are hard.
Yes. And I know our kids and students have tons of skills to work on. So really your speech inspired us that what skills should be prioritized to prepare them into adulthood. So again, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and heartfelt insights tonight. We've all learned so much about how to better prepare our children for adulthood with confidence and compassion. And thank you for everyone who joined us this evening. Your participation and thoughtful questions make all those conversations so meaningful. So we hope to see you at our next seminar. And we also hope that you could participate in our near future survey about preventative healthcare in Asian American autism community. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Zaks.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night. So in our community, Dr. Zaks, so in our community members still can like they probably will have more questions, so they can still like email you and ask questions or
I think on the website of Dr. Zaks, he provides consultation service for a fee. So maybe if you are interested, you can email him. He shared his email, and that you can, get some customized consultation and services. Is that right, Dr. Zaks?
Yes, I mean, certainly if you're, looking for a colleague in Canada, I'm not going to charge you to email and help you find that.